The Pittsburgh Pirates defeated the Milwaukee Brewers again, and the starting pitching is remaining dominant and efficient.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to that Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody, here on Wednesday, April 24th. My name is Ethan Smith, host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. And folks, the Pittsburgh Pirates are winning baseball games again. They have now won 2 in a row against the Milwaukee Brewers to begin this 4-game set against their NL Central foes. And a lot of it has been attributed to what we have seen from the starting pitcher, specifically in this series, but what we've also seen overall this year. Obviously, on Monday, Jared Jones continued to make history. That's the show that we talked about yesterday. That was a very fun episode to talk about Jared Jones and the history that he's been making through his first 5 starts. If you haven't checked that one out, please go check that one out as well. Bailey Falter followed suit on Tuesday evening, having a pretty solid day for himself. Obviously, Bailey Falter, kind of the punching bag of this rotation going into the year, obviously with Jared Jones, not really knowing if he was going to make the team out of spring. Obviously, he does, and he's done great things. Then you obviously have Policygenius coming to the fold eventually, but right now the Pirates obviously doing their due diligence to keep Policygenius healthy, fresh, and ready to go for when he is ready to come up here. And Bailey Falter has kind of been that guy that a lot of people have said, yeah, get him out of the rotation. He doesn't need to be here. I was one of those guys. I was not a component of wanting Bailey Falter in this rotation, and I didn't really want anything to do with Bailey Falter being in this rotation. But he's been a pleasant surprise so far. Obviously, last night, and you guys are going to start seeing now, I start writing things down now from this trusty little notepad that I have, but 7 innings pitched from Bailey Falter last night, 3 hits. Obviously, the 1 earned run coming from the Gary Sanchez no-doubter in the 7th inning before he was able to record an out. So that's the biggest reason why Bailey Falter did give up an earned run, may have stayed in there just a little bit too long. I understood putting him out there in the 8th. He looked absolutely dominant against that Milwaukee Brewers offense yesterday. 8 strikeouts, which tied a career high for Bailey Falter on 85 pitches, and 61 of those being strikes. And don't look now, folks, but Bailey Falter has a 3.33 ERA, and he's been doing some pretty good things. And Greg Brown on the broadcast has went out of his way multiple times to let people know that really outside of that first inning that he had in his first start against the Miami Marlins to begin the year, where he gave up the grand slam after surrendering pretty much everything that he could in that game in the first 5 batters. Ever since then, he's really relatively been one of the better Pirates pitchers on the entire roster at this point, I would argue. And when you break that down and you really look at how good he's been, specifically on the fastball last night, the pitch that he likes to throw a lot, I believe he threw it about 73% of the time. He had 13 whiffs on his fastball last night. And it's not just Bailey Falter right now either, folks. It is a multitude of different things that we're seeing from this starting pitching staff. Obviously, Mitch Keller in his last start didn't have the greatest outing that he would want to have either, but he's picked it up as of late after especially those first 2 starts that he really did not enjoy whatsoever. Martin Perez has looked very good. That's starting to look like a very good signing that the Pittsburgh Pirates made in the offseason. But, excuse me. But when you break it down, you're looking at the starting pitching staff and what it's been able to offer. Jared Jones obviously has done phenomenal things. And you just heard me mention Perez and Keller. And then Falter has contributed as well. I mean, again, you heard me mention that he dropped that ERA down to a 3.33 ERA. But to give you sort of an idea of what this starting pitching staff has been able to do. Now, obviously, you're hoping that Marco Gonzalez can enter the fold again. He was looking pretty efficient as well before he went down with an injury. Obviously, one of the bigger things that we were worried about in acquiring Marco Gonzalez. But the starting pitchers for the Pirates right now have worked 136 innings, which is second most in baseball, only behind the Philadelphia Phillies, who are at about a 141. That was before their game tonight. And to add to that, Pirates pitching right now overall, including the bullpen, which has also looked a lot better. David Bednar obviously getting the second save in a row and pitching his third straight day on Tuesday evening against the Milwaukee Brewers. The entire staff has a 1.22 whip, which ranks seventh in Major League Baseball right now. Now, some of that can also be attributed to Quinn Priester only having one start so far and not having the greatest start. So you rip some of those stats away, and all these numbers probably look a lot better. But I also don't know, is Quinn Priester going to have that bad of an outing again against the Brewers offense that, as I mentioned, outside of Saturday, this past Saturday, has looked about just as bad as this Pirates offense has looked over the past week. And that's one thing that you can usually look at even over the past couple years with the Milwaukee Brewers, that their pitching has been their calling card. But right now, their pitching is also dealing with a lot of issues. Their pitching is also dealing with, a lot of injuries. Obviously, losing Corbin Burns to the Baltimore Orioles in a trade in the offseason. Brandon Woodruff was not going to be expected to be here this year. So you got a MLB debut, and the Pirates took advantage of it. And those are the things that you want to see this Pittsburgh Pirates team do, is you want to see them take advantage of these things, especially when they're facing offenses that aren't all that great. And the Milwaukee Brewers offense is not great. And Jared Jones and Bailey Falter, through these first two outings, have looked really good. They have done very good things. They filled the strike zone. Again, to go back to Falter, 61 strikes on 85 pitches, was just really letting himself have an ebb and flow. And that's what you want to see from these starting pitchers, is you want to see that tonight from Quinn Priester. You want to see that on Thursday from Mitch Keller, and so on and so forth. You want to see these guys go out there and be able to create an ebb and flow. Now, obviously, run support would also be nice. The Pirates scoring 4 runs in the first game, 2 runs in the second game. But also the pitching in this series so far has been good enough for them to not really need to do all that much offensively. Now, is this something that the Pirates are going to be able to rely on all the time? I don't think so. I mean, go back to last week when the Mets and the Red Sox were kind of taking care of business, especially against the bullpen. The starters still looked relatively efficient last week. Obviously, you had Jones, who looked efficient. Bailey Falter had an efficient last outing as well against the New York Mets. And then Mitch Keller obviously having a couple of outings there. Obviously, the Red Sox one not as good as you wanted it to be, but still not a terrible one. But at some point, you are going to want to have that run support to pair with the starting pitching. And when we were talking all offseason about this starting pitching, you knew that it was expected to be a weakness. Now, it's still very early in the season, but when you're getting starts like this is where you want to take advantage of when you're getting starts like this, especially when your starting pitching staff is relatively healthy. Marco Gonzalez is the only guy that's went down so far, knock on wood. Injuries can happen. Martin Perez is an older, grizzled veteran. An injury could happen at any point. Mitch Keller, you never know, could go down at any point. Jared Jones, he's doing great. He's a very young kid. Hope he doesn't go down with injury, but these things happen in baseball. So take advantage now, early in the year, when you're getting these quality starts, which I'm sure the Pirates have to be up there in quality starts. I couldn't find any website that would let me find the team rankings for quality starts for some reason. But you got to take advantage of these things. And so far, through the first 2 games of the series, the offense hasn't done all that much. They've been getting in the hit category, thankfully, a little bit more. But now you would like to see those hits translate to runs. And you saw that happen, obviously, with an Andrew McCutchen leadoff home run for the second straight day, which we'll talk about in the second segment of today's show. And you saw that again with Connor Joe, who I publicly on Twitter said needs to be starting over Rowdy Tellez at first base because he's just tearing the cover off the ball right now. I believe he leads the team in OPS for all qualified hitters. But pair these things together at some point, the efficient starting pitching and the dominant starting pitching that you're getting from guys that you didn't expect to get it from, like a Jared Jones and like a Bailey Falter, and maybe even to an extent a Martin Perez. And then you start pairing wins together. And that's what we've seen through the first 2 games of this series so far is, they haven't needed a ton of runs because they've only given up 3 so far throughout the entire series. But who's to say the Brewers offense doesn't light a spark through these last 2 games? Maybe they do. And that's where you're going to want that offense to come back and combat that. But if you continue to get these starts from your starters that you're getting right now, you want to turn those into wins more often than you make them be no decisions for that starter. You want to make sure that when you're getting starts like this, especially from a guy like Bailey Falter, who just bluntly is playing over his head and over what we've seen from Bailey Falter in his tenure as a Pittsburgh Pirate, you want to turn those into wins more often than not. And the last 2 days, they've found ways to do that. Are they ways that I like? I would like to see some more offensive production, but a win is a win in the column of wins and losses. But you're not going to get these starts forever. You're not going to get these kind of starts night in and night out. We already saw with Quinn Priester in his last outing that he just got absolutely shelled after looking pretty good in the minors. I even said I expected some of it to translate and that he had to eliminate the home run ball. He did not do that against the Boston Red Sox. He will have to do that today against the Milwaukee Brewers. He cannot allow the home run ball to just ruin his outings, and that has been the Achilles heel for Quinn Priester in his short professional career, especially at the big league level. So you're not going to get these starts all the time, but when you do, turn them into wins more often than not. And that's what they've done through the last 2 games. They've done it quite a bit to start the year, too. You've seen some good starts where the Pirates took advantage of those good starts, handed it off to that bullpen that I keep telling all of you is a top 10 unit, no matter how much you want to disagree with me on when they give up leads like they did last week. But it's a top 10 unit. David Bednar looks like he's finally getting out of that spring training funk because he didn't get a spring training. Aroldis Chapman has his struggles, but he's still figuring it out. Colin Holderman has been shut down since coming back off the IL. Even Hunter Stratton has looked pretty good. So you're pairing all this together, and then you can start creating a formula for wins. And the more often that the Pirates get these efficient and dominant starts, like they have from Jared Jones and Bailey Falter, the more often they're going to win baseball games, folks. And that's what you want to see. By the way, Andrew McCutchen hit another leadoff home run to kick off the game yesterday, his second in a row in 2 days. The advanced analytics might suggest that they should keep him there. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we do, folks, we're going to talk about prize picks in Monopoly. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Download Monopoly Go free on the App Store and Google Play because it's the one place that you want to go to play the classic board game Monopoly on the go. And folks, you can explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon, all while racking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, and you can charge your friends rent on your iconic properties or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. But my favorite part is the leaderboards, where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who isn't. And guess what? Those people go bankrupt. So go get yourself on the charts and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store and Google Play. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 because Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. You can even get in on the playoff action in basketball's postseason and the NHL playoffs. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 at Prize Picks, where you pick more and pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. And folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. And never forget, you might be able to see me over there at Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 streaming channel that's available to you from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find all types of news, sports, and analysis from your favorite local and national hosts on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV. Go check it out. It's very fun. I usually start my mornings with Locked On Sports Today, obviously hosted by Peter Bukowski. That's the show. The streaming channel itself always has a lot of great content to keep you in the know. As far as keeping you in the know with the Pittsburgh Pirates, that's what I do here on the Locked On Pirates podcast. Again, follow me on Twitter right there at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And one of the guys that's starting to just heat up just a little bit, starting to heat up just a tad, is Andrew McCutchen. Derek Shelton, for all the antics that I like to call it, that he has likes to do with the starting lineup every single day, has done something quite all right over the last 2 days, and that's been throwing Andrew McCutchen in the leadoff spot. Andrew McCutchen, who has not had the greatest start to the 2024 campaign, as I mentioned, a notoriously slow starter. More often than not, he is one of those guys that does take a little bit to get going. Talked about that on the show yesterday. But since moving to the leadoff spot, he's hit 2 homers in his first at-bat the last 2 days. And he's looked very comfortable in that spot. Obviously, with the heavy on-base percentage that Andrew McCutchen possesses over his career and what he usually possesses season to season, it's not a bad idea. And I think that some of the analytics suggest that they should keep him there, and it's something that's working. And I've been driving this a lot lately. That especially with Derek Shelton, I want him to keep guys in the lineup that are seeing the ball well and keep them in consistent spots so that they can find consistency in themselves. I keep using Connor Joe as a reference point. Connor Joe, obviously, with the game-winning RBI in the 6th inning that would end up being the difference in the game, and he pinched hit in that spot. He started Rowdy Tellez, who's batting near the Mendoza line right now, albeit very early in the year. You get all these crazy slash lines and everything from early in the year. But Rowdy Tellez just hasn't had it right now, and Connor Joe does. Right now for Andrew McCutchen, I know he's not the guy that at his age that you want to play every day. Obviously, he's primarily DHing, and that's fine. But right now, you're trying to win baseball games, and that should always be the goal. The goal should always be to win baseball games. And I would suggest that at this current moment, I would probably keep Andrew McCutchen at the leadoff spot if you want to win baseball games. Because over the past 2 days in this Brewers series, which again, Pirates have already clinched the series split, which is massive in these NL Central games. I talked about that in the final segment of the show yesterday. He's already hit 2 homers in this series. He's picking it up a little bit. He's starting to see the ball a little bit better again. Now, again, you probably don't want him out there every day, but I would put him out there more often than not right now. And then you look just across his career. And Andrew McCutchen has had a phenomenal career. You don't need rocket science for me to tell you that. But when you dive deeper a little bit into what he's been specifically as a leadoff hitter, He's been a career 286 leadoff hitter. I would suggest that that's pretty good for just one spot in the order. But then you go deeper into that, and he has an 836 OPS, well above league average, and a 122 WRC plus. So he does pretty good, not only in 2024, where I believe he's only had about 6 at-bats and is batting very, very efficiently in those at-bats from the leadoff spot, but across his entire career, Andrew McCutchen has been a guy that has done relatively well in the leadoff spot. So this all boils back to that point that I keep making, where you want Derek Shelton to just leave things be when they're working. And as Gary suggested on Monday, stop creating problems that don't need to exist. That is exactly the driving force of this. And Andrew McCutchen over the past 2 days. Now, again, it's 2 days. Very small sample size. He could easily tonight lead off and go 0 for 4. Something that could easily happen. But over the past 2 days, he's been a big reason why they've won these baseball games. Because one, they've instantly got out to leads, which is giving your starter already an advantage. And Jared Jones and Bailey Falter have taken advantage of that advantage. And two, it's something that's working. The offense, again, is still not where you want it to be. Do not let these 2 wins cloud the fact that this offense is still not anywhere where it needs to be. And we know the offensive philosophy is something that we've talked about over the past 3 days quite a bit. And there's a reason for that. But when you break down that Connor Joe, who I used for example, is hitting the baseball very well. Brian Reynolds is even starting to see the ball quite a bit. He's seeing the ball well quite a bit lately. Andrew McCutchen over the past 2 days has hit a homer in the leadoff spot to get the Pirates out to a lead instantly. So why not let it roll for a week? Why not just say screw it and just throw it out there and let it roll and let it ride for a week? There's no overarching mythical being that is telling Derek Shelton that he can't throw Andrew McCutchen out there in the leadoff spot for the next 3 days. Meanwhile, Cutch, by the way, has brought in his OPS up to a 741, and the top 3 in the order, Cutch, Reynolds, and Hayes, all above 723 or higher in that OPS mark. Obviously, Hayes and Reynolds with other hits today. Hayes starting to see the ball pretty well again. Still, as you have to get that home run. Maybe we see it in this series. Be interesting to see. O'Neal Cruz, even, by the way, to go back to drive this point even further, has slid down the order. He batted 8th on Monday, 7th yesterday, 237 now. Got another hit. Had the 2 RBIs on Monday. So these are things that we are seeing with our eyes that are working. So Derek Shelton is seeing these exact same things, and I'm sure he's seeing them better because not all of us could be managers of a professional baseball team, even though we think we could be. But just let it ride. It's working. Just let it happen. Make the changes where you think where you need to make the changes, i.e., Connor Joe starting at first base, and let the rest just play itself out because baseball is a game of trends. It's a game of streaks. And right now, over the past 2 days, Andrew McCutchen has created something that I would consider a trend, and that's looking good outside of the leadoff spot. He's homered in 2 straight games. Starting to see the ball better. So just leave him there. And the analytics suggest that they should. As you heard me mention earlier, near 290 hitter in his career from the leadoff spot and a near 840 OPS guy from that spot. Hats off to you, Cutch. You're looking good and you're getting us wins. And the Pirates will look to win the series tonight against the Milwaukee Brewers in Game 3 of the series, where they welcome an old friend on the other side. It'll be Quinn Priester versus Bryce Wilson, but we will preview that in just a moment. Before we do, let's hear from a new sponsor, DoorDash. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. Order on DoorDash today and use code LOCKEDONMLB when you're ordering on DoorDash, because does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she outdoorsy? Well, no matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout, wear, and more. Because you can get a gift card at DoorDash or get other thoughtful gifts she deserves with the convenience you need. You choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Shop with savings that make her proud. With a Dash Pass membership, you'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including service fees, may apply and terms apply. So get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with Locked On MLB's code. That's code Locked On MLB, and order using DoorDash today. And folks, welcome to the third and final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And according to the MLB app, it will actually not be Quinn Priester getting the start tomorrow. It will be Josh Fleming in what I would assume would be an opening role. Fleming had a pretty good year so far, 1.74 ERA out of the bullpen, one of the lefty options, one of the many lefty options that the Pirates have had at their disposal out of the bullpen. That's in 10 1/3, 7 strikeouts, 1.06 whip. So we'll see what the Pirates decide to do there. I would expect that in this game against the Brewers that David Bednar will likely not be available. Obviously picked up his second save in a row and his third straight appearance out of the bullpen. So I would expect that he'll probably be unavailable. Opens the door, obviously, for a guy like Aroldis Chapman. But so far throughout the series, the Pirates really haven't needed their bullpen all that much, and that's been a strength. Meanwhile, they welcome an old friend, and that old friend, of course, being Bryce Wilson, who has appeared in 7 games so far this year, 13 2/3 innings pitched, a 3.29 ERA, 12 strikeouts, and a .88 whip. Been pretty efficient so far, I would say, for a guy like Bryce Wilson. Obviously, a career 4.74 ERA type of guy. Spent 2 seasons, of course, with the Pittsburgh Pirates, a little bit in 2021, and of course in 2022. Not exactly a great stint for him, but since going to Milwaukee, he's had a pretty good run of things. I mean, you look at his 2023, appeared in 53 games. Didn't start in any of those games. They've kind of converted him into a long relief role, and he had a 2.58 ERA last year. And you got to kind of admire that for a guy that, again, was a 5.52 ERA guy in 20 starts for the Pitts in 2022, and then in 8 starts in 2021 at a 4.91 ERA. So for the Pirates in this game, obviously, with Fleming going out there, you're expecting kind of a bullpen game, or maybe Fleming's an opener for Priester. We'll see what they decide to do on that front. You're just hoping you keep getting the efficient pitching that you've gotten so far from this series, because, again, this isn't a Brewers lineup that has looked all that great, really, at any point. I mean, Saturday, they looked very good against the St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis Cardinals have their multitude of issues from their pitching all over the place. So, take that with a grain of salt, or however you want to take it. But I think they just got to keep doing what they've been doing throughout this series. When the opportunities are there, take advantage of them. Try to create more of those opportunities offensively. Again, the Pirates have only scored 6 runs so far through the series, but they registered 16 hits through 2 games. You'd like to see those numbers improve. You would like to see that happen. But I think the bullpen, especially with Fleming, if Fleming can go out there and just do what he's done so far and look efficient in doing so, I think that'll be fine. And what I also found interesting about all this is that in the game yesterday with Bailey Falter, that was only the second time that the Milwaukee Brewers had seen a lefty all year. Take that how you want to. So they'll see another one in Josh Fleming again. But folks, thank you for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms because it is free and available to you every Monday through Friday. And we'll be back tomorrow. But until then, see you on the flip side.